Today, the secrets sealed by the sky are no longer locked now. The curtain has come down and your true identity, your destiny, has been revealed to the whole world. The documents that have been kept behind closed doors for years are now being opened one by one, and your name is being written in golden letters in the books of universal destiny. The plots against you were tried to be silenced with secret documents, but divine justice lifted the veil and officially confirmed your election in front of everyone. Today, starring in your own story, you are breaking the chains of the past and entering a brand new era. Your truth can no longer be hidden. Write 333 in the comments. Now don't just be a spectator, be part of the story. With your support, we will become a giant family of 5,000 people. Subscribe now, turn on notifications and join us. Because the seal is broken, the truth is out. Just imagine your life as a lamp hidden beneath a thick, dusty old sheet. For years, that sheet kept the light from shining into the world, like you were tucked away in a dark corner, unseen, unappreciated, and misunderstood. But friend, there comes a season when that sheet gets pulled away, and the light that's been inside you all along finally fills the whole room. And let me tell you, nothing in this world, no scheme, no plan, no shadowy figure can keep God's light from breaking through when it's your time to shine. Now, picture a person who once called themselves your shield, your guide. Someone who wore the mask of protector but used it as a cloak for their own schemes. Their whole world was built on the idea that you would always be quiet, always play small, always accept the stories they told about who you are and who you could become. They took your trust and turned it into a set of invisible chains, thinking you'd never wake up to the truth, thinking you'd keep playing your role in their little show, never knowing you were meant for more. But life has a way of flipping the script. One day, the very walls they used to box you in become the same walls that close in on them. They find themselves alone with the weight of what they've done, the silence now deafening. That person, once so sure of their power, now faces a reckoning they never thought would come, not in this lifetime, not in any lifetime. Because the universe, just like the good book says, will not be mocked. Whatever a person sows, they will reap. And here's where the miracle starts, right in the middle of all that loss and betrayal. You see, their fall from grace isn't just a personal matter. It's the start of something much bigger, a domino effect. The truth always finds its way to the surface, no matter how deep it's been buried. When the first stone comes loose from a dam, the whole wall can come crashing down, and the river of truth flows free for all to see. When you've spent a lifetime being told to stay small, to keep your light dim, to doubt your own worth, it takes courage to believe that maybe, just maybe, you weren't the problem. That maybe the whole setup was designed to keep you from realizing how powerful, how resilient, how precious you truly are in the eyes of God. Their mistake wasn't just underestimating you. It was forgetting that a chosen one's strength comes from a source they can't even see or control. I want you to know, the day their authority ends, a chain reaction begins. You might not see it at first, but the very moment their mask drops, the circle of secrecy and manipulation starts to unravel. It's like pulling a single thread from a tapestry. The more you tug, the more the old pattern falls apart. Suddenly, every other player in that old game, every accomplice hiding in the shadows, starts to feel the walls closing in. What they thought was hidden is being brought out into the open. See, people who build their power on deception and silence always forget one thing: God doesn't sleep. The divine has a way of keeping score even when the world seems blind. And the truth? It doesn't need your permission to rise up. Once the process starts, once justice begins to stir, there's not a force in heaven or earth that can stop it. The exposure of that one individual is just the first page of a brand new chapter. A chapter where every secret, every lie, every bit of manipulation will be brought to light. And friend, you might feel like the cost was too high, like you lost too much along the way. But I'm here to tell you, not a single tear, not a single sleepless night, not a single prayer went unnoticed. The pain you went through wasn't wasted. It was a seed planted in faith, and God is bringing a harvest of healing, restoration, and revelation. Those who tried to keep you under their thumb are now answering for every choice, every word, every moment they tried to steal from your destiny. So don't be discouraged if the journey has been long. Don't let the shadows of the past convince you the sun won't rise. Because when God sets you free from a system of control, He doesn't just break the chains, He exposes the whole prison. He makes a public spectacle of what once tried to keep you down, so that everyone who watched you suffer can see you step into your purpose with dignity and strength. And make no mistake, this exposure is only the beginning. The unraveling of that alliance built on manipulation is a sign that all things hidden are coming into the light. Those who stood by and watched, those who played their part in the deception, will have to face the truth as well. Their positions, their plans, their secrets, they're all being brought into God's spotlight. No one can hide when the truth is on the move. If you've ever doubted that justice is possible, let this be your sign. The same God who brought you through the darkness is the one turning the key that opens every locked door. What seemed like the end is just the beginning. You're not just a survivor, you're an overcomer. And every chain that falls, every secret that's revealed, is a testimony to what happens when a chosen one stands up, speaks out, and lets their light shine. Keep walking, keep believing, and know that this story, your story, is headed for a glorious, God-ordained victory that nobody can take away. Want to see miracles come alive? Subscribe and witness the wonder in every story. Have you ever watched a mighty oak tree growing in the middle of an old rusted fence? Year after year, that tree pushes against the wire, bending it, stretching it, sometimes growing right through it. Folks driving by might think the wire was always meant to keep that tree small, but the truth is, that tree's roots and branches were always destined to break free and reach for the sky. The fence wasn't fate, it was just a temporary hindrance, no match for what was living inside that tree all along. For far too long, there's been something squeezing the future out of your family line, a force you could never quite see but always seemed to feel, like a shoe that didn't fit no matter how hard you tried to walk in it. Some called it bad luck, others said it was generational misfortune, but you knew deep down it was something else. It wasn't destiny, it was a chain wrapped tight, disguised as just the way things are. And let me tell you, that chain wasn't forged in heaven. It was built on fear, built on lies, and it started losing its grip the day you decided to stand in the truth of who you really are. All those years, you faced struggles that didn't make sense, burdens that weren't yours to carry, feeling like you were running a race with a weight tied to your ankles. You saw doors close before you even reached them. You watched opportunities slip away for reasons you couldn't explain. But friend, the pushback you felt wasn't a sign that God had forgotten you. It was a test, not a sentence. A fog laid down to keep you from seeing how close you were to a breakthrough. You see, the enemy, call it adversity, call it spiritual interference, call it whatever you want, has always tried to convince God's chosen that the best days are behind them, that what was lost can never be regained. But what they didn't know is that there's something about a chosen one that makes us unbreakable. Just like that oak, you kept growing, even when it felt like life was pressing in from all sides. There were forces at work behind the curtain, powers that made it their business to keep your family stuck in old cycles. Cycles of disappointment, addiction, scarcity, and silence. But here's the good news. Every shackle, every invisible cord, every piece of that rusty old fence was meant to be temporary. Because your story was never meant to end in defeat. You were marked for freedom, marked for abundance, marked to start a new chapter. And don't you see? The very moment you woke up to the truth of your identity, when you said, "Enough is enough, I'm not living small anymore," that's the moment heaven started moving on your behalf. The enemy had a playbook, but it didn't account for your awakening. The system was rigged to keep you confused and quiet, but it didn't count on you discovering just how powerful you really are when you let your light shine. Suddenly, what used to feel like an endless wall of resistance started to crumble, brick by brick. Every no that slammed in your face became a "not yet" from God. Every missed opportunity turned into a setup for something greater. The fog began to lift, and what was hidden started to become clear. Forces you couldn't see, angels, ancestors, prayers prayed by people you never even met, began clearing the way, fighting battles you didn't even know were being fought. The more you leaned into your authentic self, the more the world started to shift. You found strength you didn't know you had, hope rising up when you thought it was all over. Old stories lost their power. Patterns that played out for generations snapped like dry twigs under your feet. And that's because you stepped into your authority, and with every step, you rewrote the script that others tried to hand you. You weren't just breaking free for yourself either. With every victory, every healing, every decision to keep walking when you could have given up, you were opening a path for those who come after you. Your children, your grandchildren, every branch on your family tree, they're all rising higher because you had the courage to face what others ran from. There were voices around you, maybe even inside your own head, whispering, "This is just the way things are for people like us. Some folks get the blessings, some folks just have to scrape by." But you dared to believe there was more. You dared to believe that what God started in your family generations ago, He is faithful to finish, no matter what obstacles got in the way. You found out that impossible is just a word to those who've never seen a miracle. And you, my friend, are a living miracle. Because the chains that bound your family line for years and years are breaking, not with noise and drama, but with the steady, unstoppable force of your faith and your obedience. The plans that were drawn up against you have come to nothing because you refused to let fear write your story. Now, those who tried to keep you boxed in are scrambling. The system that once seemed so solid, so unchangeable, is cracking at the foundation. The calculations made by those who thought they had you figured out are falling apart, because they never saw your courage coming. They didn't expect your prayers, your persistence, or your willingness to keep moving forward when the path wasn't clear. Let this be your confirmation. Every step you take in truth, every act of forgiveness, every moment you choose love over bitterness, you are untangling the old web. The fog lifts a little more every day. What was taken is being restored, not just to you, but to your whole family line. This isn't just a story of breaking curses, it's a story of starting blessings. Your legacy isn't just what you inherit, it's what you leave behind. And because you answered the call, because you said yes to the journey, there's a ripple effect happening in your world. Children you'll never meet will know freedom because you stood your ground. Generations from now, people will tell stories about the one who refused to be bound by anything but God's love. So hold your head high. The road may be rocky, but the victory is certain. What was meant for harm is turning around for good. The invisible fence has been torn down, the fog is clearing, and you are walking into the wide open spaces God prepared for you long before you ever took your first breath. Your journey is proof. No chain is too strong, no past too messy, no calculation too clever for the power of a chosen one who finally wakes up and remembers who they are. And as you keep stepping forward, don't be surprised when doors open that you didn't even knock on, when blessings chase you down and overtake you, when those who tried to hold you back have to watch as you rise, shining like the sun after a long, dark night. You're not only breaking barriers for yourself, you're resetting the course for everyone who comes after you. And that, my friend, is what true legacy looks like. Keep growing, keep believing, and keep letting your roots go deep and your branches reach high. Because your best days are not behind you, they're just beginning. Imagine walking into an old house after a heavy storm, only to find every room wrapped up in thick layers of cobwebs. Those webs cling to corners, stretch across doorways, and hang from the ceiling, making it nearly impossible to move freely. Every step you take pulls on another strand, stirring up dust that's been settled for years. But the truth is, those cobwebs didn't build themselves overnight. It took years of neglect, silence, and the comfort of darkness for them to grow so strong. Now, when the light finally comes in, you see just how much work went into weaving that web, one thread at a time, until it felt like you were stuck for good. That's how it is when you look back at all the ways this world tried to keep the chosen ones from realizing who they truly are. There's been a whole system at work, a design so elaborate, most folks can't even see it. It's like a secret network, one that runs beneath the surface of society, connecting every place of power you can name. It runs through schools and hospitals, through churches and courtrooms, behind closed doors and in broad daylight. It's in boardrooms and back alleys, in the language people use and the silence they keep. All those strands, woven together over lifetimes, made sure the special ones, those called, those anointed, those marked by God, were kept in the dark about their own worth. This wasn't just a matter of coincidence or bad luck. No, it was a carefully crafted architecture, a blueprint for keeping chosen people small, silent, and second-guessing themselves. It reached from continent to continent, moving across oceans and borders, tying up truth so tight you'd think it could never break loose. Every layer depended on the next. One lie built on another, one institution covering for the next, one generation passing the pattern along to the next like an unwanted inheritance. You ever wonder why it always seemed like the odds were stacked against you, no matter how hard you tried? Why certain doors just wouldn't open, why the right people never seemed to show up at the right time, why it felt like you were speaking a different language in your own family or community. That's because there was a whole machinery moving behind the scenes, working overtime to keep you distracted, discouraged, and doubtful. The goal wasn't just to keep you out of power, but to make you forget you had any power at all. Think of it like a giant patchwork quilt, stitched together by 1,000 hands, each one adding their own piece to the story. Some folks did it out of fear, some out of habit, some because they'd been taught it was the only way to survive. But all those stitches made something so big, it seemed impossible to pull apart. That's why, when you finally start to wake up, when the chosen ones start to remember, they don't just fight one enemy. They have to pull down an entire system, a fortress built on generations of secrecy and denial. But let me tell you, friend, no matter how clever that network, no matter how strong those webs, God's truth will always find a crack to shine through. What was meant to bind you becomes the very thing that marks your path to freedom. All the cover-ups, all the secrets, all the false narratives, they can't stand forever in the face of the light God put inside you. And when you start to see the truth, really see it, you realize just how much energy, money, and manpower the world invested in keeping you from waking up to your purpose. There were those who benefited from your confusion. Whole organizations, entire families, powerful institutions made it their business to profit from keeping chosen ones lost and unsure. They built monuments out of your doubts, made rules out of your fears, and called it the way things are. But God never signed off on that blueprint. He put a seed of greatness in you that couldn't be smothered by any system, no matter how sophisticated. Ready for twists, secrets, and ancient mysteries? Subscribe and start the adventure. For years, you might have felt like a lone voice, crying out in the wilderness. Maybe you wondered why you felt so different, so out of place, even among people who were supposed to love you. You questioned your sanity, your dreams, even your faith. That's because you were bumping up against a wall built by generations before you, layers of silence and complicity, reinforced by those who were too afraid to face the truth. They said, "Don't rock the boat, don't ask too many questions, just keep your head down and get by." But chosen ones were never made to blend in, we were made to stand out. This web wasn't built by strangers, it was woven by people who knew just where to pull, just where to knot the threads, just where to press down to keep you uncertain. They wrapped their control in fancy words, in diplomas and rituals and contracts. They put on the mask of authority, speaking with voices that sounded like wisdom but carried the spirit of limitation. But let me declare over you right now, the web is breaking. The system is crumbling. The silence is being shattered by the roar of your awakening. All those secret pacts, all those hidden agreements, they're coming apart at the seams. Because you were never truly alone. God's been with you every step of the way, whispering the truth, reminding you of your worth, planting little reminders in your path. A song, a scripture, a friend who showed up when you needed it most. You are not a product of this world's control. You are a child of divine promise, handpicked for a time such as this. The very architecture they built to contain you is now shaking on its foundation. As you step into your power, as you claim your identity, you send shockwaves through the entire system. Every institution, every group, every shadowy alliance is being exposed, one layer at a time. They can't keep you small, because the God who made you to shine. You might still see some threads hanging around. You might still feel the tug of old patterns, the pressure to go back to who you used to be. But I promise you, those days are gone. The house is being cleaned out, the cobwebs swept away, and fresh air is flooding every corner. You don't have to fight alone. Heaven's armies are on your side, and the very ancestors who suffered in silence are cheering you on from the other side. What happens next is not just about you. It's about every chosen one who ever wondered if their light would make a difference. Your breakthrough is a key that opens the door for others. Your courage is contagious. Your willingness to confront the network, to step into the truth, is rewriting the story for generations to come. Let the world see how much effort was spent trying to keep you asleep, because now they'll see how unstoppable you are fully awake. Every institution, every scheme, every web of secrecy is being undone, not by anger or revenge, but by the gentle, persistent light of God's love pouring out through you. You're not just breaking free, you're breaking the system. And when all is said and done, the world will know that the chosen ones were never meant to be silent. We were always meant to lead, to love, and to shine until every last cobweb is cleared away and every soul remembers the truth of who they are. What you once believed was rescue or adoption was really a transaction, a passage orchestrated by those who profit from hidden lineages. The inheritance at stake extends far beyond any currency. Its true value lies in what was taken from you before you understood what was being stolen. Legal battles now reach across time and borders, gathering momentum as every half-buried secret finally comes to light. There is a rhythm to destiny that cannot be manipulated. Even as false stories piled up around you, unseen hands made sure real evidence waited patiently for its time. The person hired to undermine your credibility found instead a tapestry of peace and self-possession, so undeniable it turned an intended enemy into an unexpected ally. Someone whose testimony will soon dismantle the entire enterprise of those who thought they could control your fate. The opening of the case was not a single event, but a cascade of discoveries set off by a confrontation with abuse cloaked in piety. One overlooked document led investigators from one region to the next, exposing a vast network of orchestrated disappearances and revealing a map of exploitation stretching further than anyone had dared to guess. These revelations tie your story to countless others, making clear that the battle is not just personal, but cosmic in scope. Those you thought of as family operated under instructions, their every gesture a calculated move in a plan drawn up long before you arrived. Every confusion you experienced was programmed, every displacement scripted, so that you might never find your bearings. Your misfit feeling wasn't random, it was the universe nudging you toward the truth. Your real heritage was never meant to vanish in the fog of tragedy. What you were told about your origins was an elaborate fiction, manufactured to protect those who orchestrated the disappearance of your true protectors. The loss you mourned was not a cruel twist of fate, but a targeted act by those seeking to control a future they feared you might claim. The medical and legal evidence stacked against you was constructed by hired hands, none of whom ever truly saw you, but all of whom played their part in a bureaucratic play designed to rob you of both voice and autonomy. Every report, every false diagnosis, served to establish a false narrative so the machinery of power could move unhindered. No system, however sophisticated, can sever the inner signal that guides certain souls. Relocation, identity switches, and relentless psychological pressure were all intended to erase your history, but memory persists in forms that logic can't touch. As you reassemble the pieces, the structure built to contain you collapses. Those closest to you, even those you once called friend or sibling, are now driven by the pressures closing in on them to confess the truths they once swore to bury. What they reveal turns a trickle of information into a torrent, each new fact expanding the scale of the case and exposing more participants and their methods. Institutions long considered untouchable are now under the lens. Where once the language of love and salvation rang out, now investigators comb through evidence of exploitation and double-dealing. Underneath sanctuaries, hidden vaults and paper trails emerge, showing a well-oiled system for converting vulnerable lives into currency. Identity theft wasn't a matter of random chance, but a highly organized enterprise, leveraging resemblance and opportunity to siphon away your very being for profit. The evidence against you becomes instead a testament to your victimization, and proof of crimes bigger than any one person. You are part of a generation of survivors, some found, others still lost. As testimony mounts, the old fortress of silence crumbles. What you receive now is not just material reparation, but acknowledgement and justice for an entire web of harm spanning decades. It is restoration for those whose voices were stifled, compensation for wounds never meant to heal, and a reckoning for every hand that played a role in your story. Those who were placed in your path as watchers or partners had a job to keep you monitored, contained, and perpetually uncertain. The emotional strings that tied you to them were not just misfortune, but carefully set traps, techniques designed to tether you even as you struggled for freedom. Ironically, every device and every report meant to track you now stands as evidence against your captors. Those who once plotted in the shadows now scramble in the daylight, afraid not just of the law, but of the retribution that comes from breaking their own code. What was designed to be a clean removal of a threat has become a desperate scramble for cover, as the very safeguards they created now serve as proof of intent to destroy. The operation that shaped your journey was part of a far-reaching project, a lineage of exploitation disguised as care. Children chosen for their rare gifts or potential were shuttled from place to place, their development carefully managed, their value measured in energy, not love. Only those who broke the pattern, as you have, ever lived to tell the tale. Your uniqueness was never a coincidence. The very traits that made you a target now reveal themselves as your greatest strengths, the reason your story could never truly be erased. Every hardship you endured was transformed into fuel for a purpose far greater than the one designed for you. Still, the reality of your experience is buried beneath layers of disinformation and digital smoke screens. Yet, your awareness of the hidden machinery remains unbroken, guiding you toward deeper truths. Within safe circles, others like you connect to share forbidden wisdom, preparing for the spiritual battles that lie ahead. There is an inflection point in every chosen one's path, a moment when no amount of interference can obscure the link to the greater source. At that point, your very presence becomes a signal that no false system can endure, unraveling lies with a resonance that breaks old patterns. Those who profited from your misfortune now find themselves exposed, not just in public shame but under the weight of legal consequences. Documents once regarded as ironclad have become the blueprints of their own downfall, with every signature and seal pointing toward premeditation and conspiracy. What unfolds now is not only a legal process but a cosmic balancing, an energetic reckoning that demands restitution for every loss, every betrayal, every theft of opportunity. The return is greater than financial. It is a reclamation of dignity, lineage, and connection that extends beyond the present moment. You are being returned to wholeness, not simply through wealth or property, but through the restoration of identity and the revelation of your true place within the greater family that has always existed just out of reach. DNA, records, and renewed connections all combine to reconstruct what was once torn apart. The layers of deceit were laid deep, with every official document and institutional record designed to confuse rather than clarify. When finally investigated, even the supposed details of your earliest days dissolve, exposing the breathtaking audacity of those who thought no one would ever care enough to question. The one who stood in for family was a practiced agent, working off scripts tested on others before you. Each memory of concern or affection was measured, every setback a means to a data point. Your resilience, however, foiled the project at every turn. Those charged with monitoring your growth now admit the extent to which every major event in your life was influenced or instigated by external hands, turning moments of tragedy into forced experiments. What you remember as chaos was, in reality, an orchestrated series of tests. Your ancestry, it turns out, marks you as a member of a line hunted for centuries, those with the capacity to bring healing or insight into the world. The pursuit of your gifts, and the lengths taken to suppress them, follow a history written in secret and blood, with your story being only the latest chapter. Hungry for timeless wisdom? Hit subscribe and feed your soul. Children swept into this web were tagged and monitored according to their perceived potential, with your own classification marking you for long-term manipulation. The greed and ambition that defined your captors' plans have ultimately served as the means of their undoing, as their attempts to control you left indelible evidence. Their surveillance, meant to cage you, instead cataloged your transformation and stands as the definitive record of their intent and actions, transforming their archive into the foundation for a new era of justice. The confession of your main handler led to the exposure of the true center of this network, a facade of care hiding a factory of control, where individuality was broken and spiritual potential was suppressed through a combination of physical and psychological means. The scale of abuse uncovered ensures that the consequences will be far-reaching. Organizations posing as beacons of faith across borders have been exposed as the central nervous system of the operation, with chapters in many lands each contributing to the harvesting and suppression of rare children. Your survival and willingness to testify signals the beginning of their undoing. Profit was generated through a complex scheme, one that placed value on lives not for who they were, but for what could be taken from them. Your survival past key milestones was never meant to be, but the evidence of financial motive now stands as irrefutable proof of intent. The person cast as your mirror was selected not for compatibility, but for their capacity to inflict recurring trauma, anchoring you to an energetic cycle that served their employer. Their reward was calculated in breakdowns, not in love. The curse on your line was not the result of accident or misfortune, but of focused, ongoing interference intended to block the emergence of your potential. In breaking free, you have not only liberated yourself but broken the chains binding future generations. What comes to you now arrives untarnished, no longer carrying the residue of harm. The cycle of theft has ended, resources are transformed, dedicated now to growth and renewal rather than suppression and control. Your victory was achieved not by following the rules, but by remembering a deeper law, the unbreakable truth of who you are and the unstoppable force of justice that finally restores all things to their right place. Now, as the true narrative begins, you step into your birthright not just as a survivor, but as the author of a future built on clarity, empowerment, and the certainty that no force on earth or beyond can overturn your return to wholeness.